What's going on? It's Lucas Tracy MMA, and I am signing off. That's right, you read the title. This is the last final video, maybe not of all time, but for the foreseeable future. Guys, it's time for me to make a tough decision in my life. And I've been thinking about this for the past 6 months. I've been thinking about this since the winter, about do I just want to do this for a living? I love MMA. I've been watching MMA for years before I ever made content covering it, and I'll be watching MMA for the rest of my life. Unless I get bored of it, which I do not think I will, because I think once you're an MMA fan, you're an MMA fan forever. It's addictive. The sport is addictive. I like being a YouTuber. I like making content. I get to be creative. It's a dream job. I talk about MMA for a living, which is the sport that I love. I get to banter with people. I get to crack jokes. It's a dream job. But when I think about my future, and when I think about, do I want to invest work and a career into just this? Or do I want to do other things in life as well? And that is the reason why I am going to pursue something else, which I've even been working on behind the scenes for quite some time, specifically a health-related business idea that is going to require a lot of effort. And I'm not this half-ass type of person that, can only do a little bit here and then, I'm an all or nothing type of person. For YouTube, you can't be half-assed with YouTube. And that's the same thing with anything else in life. If you do something in life and you want to make it your career and you want to pursue it and you want to turn it into some kind of a job, you've got to put a lot of effort forth. You've got to put a lot of hours into it. Making MMA content has been a huge part of my life for the past couple of years. And I am never going to forget this time. I'm never going to forget the memories that I had making MMA content, live streaming, cracking jokes, bantering, creating inside jokes, coming up with catchphrases, having, the niche Lucas Tracy memes, debating things in our live streams, going back and forth with the real hardcore fans, discussing Volk's legacy. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm going to remember about this time that I can look back on and I can say, this was a good moment. This was a good thing in my life, and I'm going to remember it for the rest of my life. I want to thank all of the subscribers that have been supporting this channel. I want to thank everyone that has been here on this channel's journey from the moment we started in January or February of 2022 till now. I wasn't really hammering a lot of content back then. It wasn't really until the fall of 2022 where I actually started consistently posting. But for those of you that have been subscribed for a long time, for those of you that have been in my live streams, for those of you that have been members of the channel, dedicated followers of the channel, I cannot thank you guys enough for the support that you guys have given me over the past year and a half. This is a big part of my life. This has been my life for the past year and a half. Making content in general has been my life for the past 3 years. And I want to let you guys know that I appreciate all the moments that I've had with the people that have supported this channel. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to get emotional or whatever, but I'm going to have a lot of good memories, man. I'm going to have a lot of good memories. A lot of good memories. Again, for the people that watch this channel. I could literally rattle off so many names for the supporters on this channel. A lot of the members and a lot of consistent people that I see in my live streams. Thank you for being here. And the MMA YouTube scene is in good hands. There's a lot of people that are coming up and their channels are growing, and there's a lot of people that have been holding it down for a long time. All right. I'm going to be picking Adesanya to beat. No. That's just, I'm not picking, I'm going to be picking Dricus Du Plessis to beat Adesanya. I may as well fucking rattle off, my picks. Hopefully Shamil Gaziev becomes champ. Hopefully Volkanovski comes back and wins again and becomes a double champ. Or I want Volkanovski to be undefeated for forever, but yeah, this is it. This is it, guys. It's time for a new journey. It's time for something new. And even though it's time for me to move on to other things, to try new things in life, I am going to be doing a breakdown on UFC 305, and this is going to be the full card breakdown. We're going to get into this, but again, I appreciate all of you guys being with me on this journey, this MMA YouTube journey, and I'm very grateful that I could share my passion for MMA with you guys, and I want to thank you for that. But let's do this breakdown. Let's get into this, guys. Stuart Nicole versus Jesus Aguilar. Stuart Nicole with the blacked out photo. We don't know what he looks like, but I do because I've actually watched his last couple of fights. He's undefeated. He's 8-0 on the smaller side for the flyweight division, but he's actually one of the best prospects coming out of the Australia, New Zealand region. Undefeated. He's a predominant grappler, pretty well-rounded as most flyweights are, but predominant grappler with finishing ability on the ground. He can impose his will like a madman. He has great takedown entries. And when I watch this guy fight, I've watched a couple of his fights back. He's taking people down easily, repeatedly when they get up. He's got great cardio to keep the wrestling pace going. And when he puts people on the mat, he beats them up with vicious ground and pound. That's pretty much Stuart Nicole's game plan for most of his fights. Take people down, beat them up, try to get a submission, try to get a TKO on the ground. Jesus Aguilar is pretty good. But I just think that Stuart Nicole impresses me a little bit more with his ability to impose his will. He's a really solid grappler, very dangerous grappler, and I think he's going to be able to take down Jesus Aguilar, who's got a couple of wins in a row in the UFC, but there's nothing that really stands out that much other than the power. He did have a crazy one-punch KO a while ago. I think that was last year on the Noche card. He's got the shortest reach in the UFC. Stuart Nicole, as I said, is on the smaller side for the flyweight division. So they're going to be similar stature, but I just think Stuart Nicole will be able to handle his own on the feet. And I think that he's going to get this fight to the ground and win a dominant decision or maybe get a finish on the ground. All right, Song Kanon versus Ricky Glenn. I think that Song Kanon's going to beat Ricky Glenn. Song Kanon has more... he's got more wind in his sails, man. I think he's got more time. He might be older than Ricky Glenn, but Ricky Glenn's coming off of 3 KO losses in a row. And Song Kanon, yeah, he got knocked out by Ian Gary, but since then, he's lost by decision to Kevin Jousset. And I think that if you're going to a decision with Kevin Jousset, I don't know if Ricky Glenn's going to finish you. And then before that, he beat Rolando Bedoya, who's a training partner of Charles Oliveira, who had a war with Jai Herbert recently. And Jai Herbert's got that lighter weight class skill. And Bedoya put up a really good fight. Song Kanon beat Bedoya and dropped him. He's got a lot of power. He dropped Ian Gary back in the day, and since then, Ian Gary's not been dropped, not even by guys like Jeff Neal, not even by MVP. Song Kanon has a lot of power in his hands. Ricky Glenn's been getting KO'd. Song Kanon's performances have been a little bit better as of recent. I'm going to go with Song Kanon by KO in the first or second round. Tom Nolan versus Alex Reyes. Dominic Reyes' brother, I believe, is back. He's 0-2 in the UFC. It's been rough for him so far. I think Tom Nolan's getting this done. I just think he's being set up for victory. But I'm picking Tom Nolan. He's going to have the reach advantage. He's going to have the range advantage. He's very dangerous. He got a nice KO in his last outing. In his first ever UFC fight, he got knocked out, which was pretty brutal. But I just don't know if Alex Reyes is that dangerous on the feet. He's lost both of his fights in the UFC. He's not been particularly dominant. He's been finished before. I think Tom Nolan is going to go in there and beat Alex Reyes by TKO. Apparently they have the same reach. That is pretty interesting. But Tom Nolan's going to have a 4-inch height advantage. So I think I'm going to go with Tom Nolan. A solid fight here. Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns. I'm going to go with Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins can push a pace. He has good cardio. He's got wicked kicks, decent boxing. Had a really good fight with Cheppy Mariscal, who is continuing to win in the UFC and beating like really tough opponents outside of the rankings. And Jack Jenkins lost that fight because he got like thrown on his arm and he broke his arm. It was like a nasty injury. He did pretty well in that fight though. And Herbert Burns just hasn't shown us an ability to push a pace past one round. It seems like every time Herbert Burns fights, he gasses out after a round and gets finished. And I think that's going to be the thing that happens here. I think that Jack Jenkins is going to beat up Herbert Burns in the second and third round. Maybe he'll face adversity early, but from what I've seen and from what we've all seen, Herbert Burns tends to really fade hard as fights go on. And I think that Jack Jenkins is going to be able to finish him and put him away. Jack Jenkins has really good striking, and I think it's going to be a big issue for Herbert Burns. So I'm going to go with Jack Jenkins by KO. Casey O'Neill versus Teresa Bleda. I'm going with Casey O'Neill. Pretty obvious pick. Going to pick Casey O'Neill just because, you know, she's the more known person and the person that usually wins these matchups. Unless Casey O'Neill is fighting someone that we know is a killer, I'm going to pick Casey O'Neill. Josh Kalibau versus Ricardo Ramos, my bad. Ricardo Ramos has more finishing ability. He's a lot more dangerous. He can knock you out. He can even submit you. But, man, his fight IQ last time out was really bad. He rocked his opponent early on in the first round and then got finished a couple minutes later because he resorted to the grappling after hurting his opponent and having them completely out on their feet. I'm going to go with Josh Kalibau by decision. Ricardo Ramos is a little bit low output. He doesn't win fights based on output. He usually wins fights based on catching people, hurting people. I think Josh Kalibau is very tricky on the feet. I know that, I mean, listen, this is a performance that happened a while ago, but Josh Kalibau did pretty well against Lerone Murphy and was winning a lot of the striking exchanges, and that looks really good in hindsight. I'm going to go with Josh Kalibau. I think Kalibau is going to win this one. So, yeah, I'm picking Kalibau by decision to get it done. Walter Walker versus Junior Tafa. What may be the slowest man in UFC history, Walter Walker versus Junior Tafa. Lucas Bresky beat Walter Walker. It was a close fight. Walter Walker was able to get him down. That was like the thing that was working for him. He was getting the takedowns because he was like, you know, it looked like he weighed 5,000 pounds in the cage. She's not fat or anything, but Walter he's got like an extra couple of tons on his frame. You know, he's like the biggest UFC fighter to ever walk the planet Earth. And that might be why he's very kind of heavy on his feet. But I'm going to go with Junior Tafa because Walter Walker, it seems like he doesn't have a great gas tank. He slowed down against Lucas Brzezinski, who was looking like a pop shotter, who was looking like a bantamweight on the feet in front of Walter Walker at times. And I think Junior Tafa, former Glory kickboxer, has KO potential, comfortable on the feet. Yeah, he got messed up against, who's that guy that he stepped in on short notice for? DeLima. I forget his name. I think that, you know, he lost that fight via leg kicks, but took that on like a day's notice. Junior Tafa is pretty good on the feet. Walter Walker doesn't have great gas tank. He's very slow with the way that he moves around. And I don't know if Walter Walker's just going to smother Junior Tafa consistently. So I think I'm going to go with Junior Tafa by KO. So let's get on to the next one. Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. I'm going with Carlos Prates. Li Jingliang is a very tough fight. All right. Carlos Prates is taking a big step up in competition. But I'm going with Prates. I think that he's been more active. When's the last time we've seen Li Jingliang even fight? I mean, it's been like a year and a half. What was it? The Nate Diaz card with Khamzat Chimaev. Was that it? The last time he fought was against D-Rod, where he was 10 pounds lighter than D-Rod because they switched all the fights around. It's been a long time since we've seen the Leech. He's got ridiculous KO power. And even though Carlos Prates didn't look that great in his debut, he still got the KO, and he looked phenomenal in his last fight where he got that like knee to the solar plexus KO. It was nasty. It was a nasty KO. And he can KO you with any limb. It could be an elbow. It could be a knee. It could be a head kick. He's got long, wiry 1-2s that you have to worry about as well. I think Carlos Prates is like a young Anderson Silva with the way that he strikes. Not saying he's going to have the same career and the same success and all that, but I'm just saying he reminds me of a young Anderson Silva with how dangerous his knees are, for example. Like how he can catch you at the end of combination, at the end of an exchange when, you know, his opponent is far out at range, but he can still tag them. I'm going to go with Carlos Prates. All right. Li Jingliang is tough. He's got a good chin, but I just think Prates is going to put him away. It's been a long time since the Leeches fought. He's getting up there in age, and I'm going to go with the more active guy. I think he's going to win this fight by a KO. So, yeah, going with Carlos Prates, but that should be a banger. That's like one of the best fights on this card. Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. You just know Tai Tuivasa is going to go in here looking for an early KO. I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik is going to weather the storm, and I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik is going to beat Tai Tuivasa by a decision or a KO. Like, we've seen Jairzinho get knocked out, but we've only seen him get knocked out once, right? Seen him get KO'd against Francis Ngannou, but Tai Tuivasa, he's been TKO'd by Gane. He's been TKO'd by Pavlovich. He's gotten submitted and beat up by Marcin Tybura, which is not the best look. You know, and he got beat up badly, took a ton of damage against Volkov as well, and then he got submitted. When you see someone getting finished left and right 4 times in a row, it's tough to pick them when they're on such a downward trajectory, right? And I got to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Jairzinho looked really good in his last outing against Shamil. And, you know, Shamil's the guy that is shooting takedowns, and he's kind of mixing it up, you know, but I just think Tai Tuivasa is going to be waddling into range. And Shamil was able to take the punches of Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I mean, Jairzinho was jabbing him up, but Tai Tuivasa is going to be easier to land that right hand on. And we know Jairzinho's got a lot of power in that right hand, and he's taken a lot less damage throughout his career than Tai Tuivasa. Tai can knock out anyone on this planet. I just think Jairzinho's a little bit crisper on the feet. His leg kicks are better. He's got a good jab, and he can establish that and kind of pop you around at range like he did to Shamil. I think I'm going to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and I think he's going to win this one. I'm going to pick Jairzinho by decision, all right? Or just Jairzinho by KO. That should be a crazy fight. Tai Tuivasa is going to have the home field advantage. People are going to be going berserk for Tai Tuivasa, but I'm going with Rozenstruik, man. He looked real good in his last outing. Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. I really want Dan Hooker to get like a slick hangman submission or guillotine, right? That's basically the hangman submission. It'd be cool to see him get like a knee up the middle KO on Mateusz Gamrot, but I think Gamrot is so fast twitch that he's going to be hard to catch with one of those knees up the middle. And, you know, Gamrot's striking is improving. He didn't really strike a lot against RDA, and he did get dropped, but he gets dropped in every single one of his fights. And I just can't pick someone to beat Gamrot off of damage anymore. You know what I mean? Gamrot gets dropped, but the knockdowns are always flash knockdowns where he doesn't really seem to be out of it after like 1 second, and it takes him a second to recover. Even if Dan Hooker drops Mateusz Gamrot, I think Gamrot's going to win, is what I'm saying. I think the wrestling is going to be too much. I think that he's going to take Dan Hooker down. I don't think he's going to submit him, but I think he's going to take him down repeatedly. He's going to push a pace on him, and he's just not going to let him settle, and he's going to smudge him up against the fence, smudge him up against the canvas, and you're going to see Gamrot just gritting down on the mouthpiece and just smudging the whole time. Just freaking gritting down on the mouthpiece, red-faced, working his ass off, just relentlessly pushing Dan Hooker into an object to where he can't do anything on his own. So I've got to go with Gamrot by decision. I think it's going to be a 29-28 Mateusz Gamrot style, just pushing a pace, holding Dan Hooker against the fence, holding him on the ground. Dan Hooker gets up. Mateusz Gamrot, that right hand is always pretty crafty. Mateusz Gamrot is a very crafty right hand. And I think he's going to be able to sneak that right hand in every once in a while. People forget Mateusz Gamrot is a very good right hand. Very good right hand does Mateusz Gamrot have. It was spinning the head of Fiziev back. Now, Dan Hooker's a lot taller and rangier than Fiziev, but yeah, I think Mateusz Gamrot's going to be able to do all right. He was landing on Jalen Turner. I think he'll be able to land on Dan Hooker. All right, so I'm going to go with Gamrot by decision. Kai Kara-France versus Steve Ercik. I've got to go with Kai Kara-France, mate. I'll pick Kai. I just think he's gonna land the left. No, I think Kai Kara-France he's been inactive. He's been out of the cage. He's been pulling out of fights. I think he had some concussion, and that was one of the reasons why he had to pull out of one of his fights a while ago. I think maybe he had got knocked out in training, or maybe he just had a concussion from something else. But Kai Kara-France has not been fighting since that fight against Amir Albazi, which was more than a year ago. Steve Ercik's been active. Steve Ercik since then has fought, I think he's fought like 4 times since then, since we've seen Kai Kara-France fight. We saw Steve Ercik fight last summer. Then we saw Steve Ercik fight at Madison Square Garden. Then we saw Steve Ercik fight Matt Schnell. Then we saw Steve Ercik fight for a world title against a nightmare matchup, a guy that's always going to be looking for takedowns. Now, Kai Kara-France doesn't shoot takedowns that often. He hardly ever shoots. Steve Ercik doesn't have to worry about Pantoja, who's a smudge grappler, who's really strong, who's got ridiculous cardio and relentless pace, forward pressure. He doesn't have to worry about a guy like that who's impossible to put away, constantly shooting takedowns, getting his back, holding onto him, and just not allowing him to do anything. And this time he's in there with a guy that's just going to stand with him. And Ercik's got the range advantage. He doesn't have a long reach. Actually, Kai Kara-France is going to have the reach advantage, but Ercik is going to have the range advantage. He's got the 4-inch height advantage. He's 5'8". Kai Kara-France is 5'4". And I just think Kai Kara-France has taken a lot of damage. He's been finished before. He's been rocked before. We don't really see Steve Ercik get hurt. Steve Ercik has a granite chin from what we see so far. I think Steve Ercik is going to be catching Kai Kara-France with uppercuts. I think Steve Ercik is going to be catching him with the long, wiry attacks, firing head kicks. He's going to be shooting takedowns as well. We know Steve Ercik can grapple. Kai Kara-France is pretty good grappling. I mean, I remember seeing him fend off the back take submission attempts by the guy Askar Askarov, the guy that was deaf, I believe. Was he deaf or was he blind? I'm pretty sure he was deaf, not blind. That wouldn't have worked so well if you're fully blind in the UFC. But Kai Kara-France is pretty good with the submission defense. I just think Steve Ercik his frame is gonna be tough to deal with for Kai Kara-France in the grappling and in the striking. And I think that Ercik has perfect technique. Kara-France's kicks are gonna be there. His combinations are gonna be there. But I just think Steve Ercik's gonna be a more dangerous fighter in there. And I think Steve Ercik's gonna have more of an ability to put Kai Kara-France away. So I'm going to go with Steve Ercik. I mean, he damn near won a world title fight. I think he should have won that title fight, honestly. It was very close, but I know it's a totally different matchup. I just think this is an easier fight for him. I think this is a guy that he can out-grapple, that he can shoot takedowns on. Whereas you can't really out-grapple Pantoja, right? Kai Kara-France, you can out-grapple him if you're a solid wrestler. Steve Ercik's grappling, even in the fight where he lost, and he lost a lot of the grappling exchanges, he still looked pretty good. He didn't get beat up. He didn't get submitted. He didn't get held down for long periods of time. I think Ercik's got this in the bag. I think he's going to win a decision, or maybe get a finish, maybe a TKO. But I'm going to go with Steve Ercik by a decision. Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. I'm gonna go with Izzy. All right? No, I'm joking. I'm picking Dricus Du Plessis. All right? Now, this is a tough fight because Dricus does have the wild style where he doesn't really have like the standard textbook sort of defense. But I think that Dricus Du Plessis and his team do a really good job at putting together game plans for their opponents. Like against Robert Whittaker, he completely nullified the high kick combination from Robert Whittaker. And he was able to work and time the karate blitz of Robert Whittaker. He was able to knock him out, catching him coming in. And then against Sean Strickland, he was able to adjust by going to the body. Lots of kicks to the body, shooting takedowns to disrupt him, and moving forward nonstop. Non-stop moving forward on Sean Strickland, which is the way you beat Sean Strickland, with output, with mixing it up to the body, mixing in the takedowns. Dricus Du Plessis has a really good ability to adjust in fights, and he has a good ability to game plan. And you have to think that his defense is going to be on point against a guy with the reach advantage, the KO power of Adesanya early, where we know Adesanya has knocked a lot of people out in the early goings of fights with counter strikes. He's very fast early on. We saw that in the Alex Pereira rematch where Pereira was starting to come on strong, pressuring him up against the fence, and we saw Adesanya unleash a 1-2 that was incredibly fast. I think that Dricus Du Plessis is not going to get KO'd, though. I don't think Dricus gets KO'd. I think his defense is going to be really good in this fight. And I actually think Adesanya is going to win the first round. I think Adesanya is going to win the first round. I think it's going to be sort of similar to the Costa first round. I actually think Adesanya is going to have a really good introduction in this fight. I think he's going to be hammering in the low kicks. And I think he's going to have like a chip on his shoulder. I think you're going to see it in the way that he looks and his facial expression, that he's going to be like, he's going to be amped up. He's going to be super aggressive. He's going to have that same sort of expression that he had against Paulo Costa. And I think he's going to start tearing up the legs of Dricus Du Plessis with the leg kicks. And I think that he's going to be jabbing Dricus Du Plessis up. But you know what? Dricus Du Plessis lost the first round to Strickland. All right? Dricus Du Plessis will never, ever fold to a little bit of adversity. And I just think that Adesanya, I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to start to build in this fight. I think he's a guy that builds into fights. And I think that when Dricus Du Plessis hits Adesanya clean a few times, I think he's going to get some respect. And I think that Dricus Du Plessis is going to start to land more strikes with the boxing. Because Adesanya doesn't have the best jab. He doesn't have the best boxing. He's pretty good defensively. But offensively, he's not a high output guy. He's sort of low output. I don't think the leg kicks are going to be enough for Adesanya to keep Dricus at bay for long. And I don't think they're going to handicap Dricus that much in this fight. I think Dricus, as the fight progresses, second round, third round, is going to remain composed, durable, and I think he's only going to gain confidence being in there longer with Adesanya. And we've seen Adesanya. He's really good early on. He's great in the first round. He's great in the second round. He KOs people. But as fights progress, I think we've seen Adesanya sort of resort to this sort of lower output rhythm that is predictable, and he's not as aggressive in the later goings of fights. Adesanya doesn't impose his will as often in the later goings of fights. I think he becomes more predictable. His output kind of stays the same. He doesn't ramp things up that often, and I think that if Dricus is still there, undeterred, second, third round, fourth round, I think Adesanya is going to start sort of folding a little bit to the pressure. And we kind of saw that in the Sean Strickland fight, where Strickland was putting a lot of pressure on him. And you could see Adesanya's body language completely change from the beginning of the first round to the end of the first round to the second, especially in the later rounds. Where, yeah, Sean Strickland's got phenomenal defense, but like, it's that forward pressure, the smothering pressure. Now, Dricus Du Plessis can't make it work the same way as Strickland because he doesn't have the boxing defense and the Philly shell. But I think in replacement of that, I think he's going to have the takedowns. In replacement of that, I think he's going to have the volume and the power and the physicality. And that's the thing about Dricus Du Plessis that makes him such a special athlete in the middleweight division. He's one of the only guys, if not the only person, that has an insane gas tank, that can keep an insane gas tank and keep up a heavy pace for the whole fight, but he puts everything into his strikes, and he's throwing with vicious intent, and again, he's committing to these strikes, and he's able to do it for 5 rounds. He's able to commit to takedowns, to commit to heavy, powerful strikes, big body kicks, spinning back fists. He's able to do this for 5 rounds straight. I think it's a bit of it is just he's just got a really good gas tank, but also it's just the mentality that Dricus has, where he can impose his will. And I think that if Adesanya doesn't badly hurt Dricus early and put him away, I think that relentless pressure, I think the power of Dricus Du Plessis mixed in with the volume, mixed in with the takedowns, mixed in with the constant forward pressure, I think he's going to start to get the upper hand, and I think he's going to start to turn the tide. I think he's going to start to get momentum, and I think when Dricus Du Plessis gets the momentum going in this fight, if he does, which I believe would happen second, third, fourth, if he gets the momentum, I don't see him losing it. I don't see him losing it. I do not see him losing it. I see him only getting better as the fight goes on. And so when I pick this fight, I think, okay, does Adesanya knock out Dricus in the first round? Maybe he could catch him with a hook. Maybe he could catch him with a 1-2, countering Dricus. Maybe Dricus leaves himself open and Adesanya puts him away. I could see it happening. I could see Adesanya mincing up the legs of Du Plessis, catching him with a right hand, catching him with a hook, knocking him out. Dricus is out cold. Yeah, he has a good chin. He has a granite chin. But, you know, if you're caught with the right shot, you could go out. So I'm not just going to say Dricus can't go out. He does have a good chin, which is why I do think he'll be all right. But I don't think Dricus Du Plessis is going to make a big mistake. I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to have his guard high in this fight. I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to have his hands glued to his face in this fight. Now, there are going to be like Captain Underpants blitzes where Dricus Du Plessis comes firing over the top like a sack of potatoes, you know, full speed ahead. But I think that Adesanya is just going to be, you know, running out of the way and maybe even getting caught. I don't think it's pretty difficult to fire back on Dricus Du Plessis because when he commits to a strike, he's fully in and he's bulldozing you. And if you're going to fire back, you got to be sure that Dricus Du Plessis doesn't bulldoze you. I think Dricus Du Plessis is not. I think Dricus Du Plessis in the kickboxing battle at range, the tit for tat battle, I think he's going to be fine. And I actually think his boxing is going to be all right. Dricus Du Plessis has a very unorthodox way of striking, but he was able to land on Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is one of the hardest fighters to hit in the UFC. Dricus Du Plessis hit Sean Strickland more than anyone else I've ever seen. Dricus Du Plessis was landing body kicks on Sean Strickland, and the body kicks, the body punches, the takedowns, it helped set up the overhands. It helped set up the big right hands that started landing later on in that fight. All right? The stuff that cut open Sean Strickland in the fourth round. I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to lose the first round. It's going to be a strong round for Adesanya, but he's going to be undeterred. He's going to be right there, and I don't think he's going to, for a second, lose confidence. Not for a second. And I think that once Dricus Du Plessis starts to get the momentum, which I believe he will because of his gas tank and his volume and his pressure, once he gets a little bit of success, I think he wins this fight. If Adesanya doesn't knock him out in the first 2 rounds, this is usually how I'm going to pick an Adesanya fight against someone that's dangerous. I got to go with his opponent, especially if that opponent has volume and isn't afraid to get hit. This is the thing. When Adesanya fought Jared Cannonier, he tried to finish him early. He couldn't finish him early. The rest of that fight, it was pretty tit for tat, sort of slow. Cannonier doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Cannonier doesn't leave himself open that often, right? And, you know, Cannonier, you got hurt badly against Imavov, which is kind of crazy. Adesanya doesn't really go for finishes. He's not that aggressive in the later goings of fights. And Cannonier isn't someone that tries to finish people that often either in the later half of a fight. Dricus Du Plessis will try to put you away. He's always going for a finish. He's always relentlessly pushing the pace. And I think his power, I think the wrestling, I don't think he's going to submit Adesanya. I don't think he's going to beat him up that bad on the ground. But I do think in the later half of this fight, if he takes the momentum, I think he'll keep it. And I think he's going to beat Adesanya up on the ground. And I think he's going to beat Adesanya up on the feet. So I'm actually going to pick Dricus Du Plessis to win this fight. And I'm going to pick him by a decision. I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to win a dominant decision. Later rounds, he's going to bank. I'm going to go with Dricus Du Plessis 49-46. I think he's going to take the second round. Big moments in the second round. I think he's going to take the third. I think he's going to take the fourth. And I think he's going to take the fifth. Maybe we see him get a finish. Maybe we don't. I think he's going to get the decision. And I think he's going to outstrike Adesanya with volume. I think Adesanya's output is not going to be enough. I don't know if Adesanya is going to take the risks, right? It's easy to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go out there and take the risks. But we got to ask ourselves, he hasn't fought in a while. Yeah, he was definitely throwing strikes at Strickland, but there was a moment in that last round where Strickland had his hands down. He was yelling at Adesanya. He was saying, come on. And Adesanya didn't fire back, not once. It seemed like Adesanya had sort of mentally deteriorated in that fight. And I think we could see the same thing because Adesanya has proven himself. He's won multiple world titles. He doesn't have to come back. Does he have the same motivation? Does he have the same drive and fire as a guy that just won the belt, who's way younger, who still hasn't made close to the amount of money as Adesanya and had as much success as Adesanya, who has, a lot that he needs to do in order to become established as a champion. I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to be way, way more driven in deep waters in this fight. And I think Dricus is going to win. Again, we could see the best Adesanya we've ever seen. He's not old. I think he's 34, 35. He's not that old for a middleweight. I just got to go with Dricus. I think he's going to survive the early onslaught. Adesanya is very dangerous early. He's very fast early. He takes more risks early. And I think he's going to be doing really well. But I think Dricus Du Plessis is going to win the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I don't think he's going to finish him. But I think once he gets the momentum, he's going to win. I think the takedowns in the later half of the fight, I think we're going to see some ground and pound from Dricus Du Plessis. We're going to see him gain a lot of confidence. And I think that the striking volume is what's going to win him this fight. So, yeah, I got Dricus Du Plessis by decision. 49-46. That is my official pick. I know Dricus has a lot of power. Adesanya's got a granite chin, too. Both of these guys have granite chins. They're very tough to put away. But I'm going with Dricus. I think he's going to win this fight, guys. And with that being said, guys, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And again, I want to thank you guys for being here with me on this journey, witnessing the channel. And I want to thank you guys for sharing all of the fun moments that we've had on this channel. And it's time for me to try different things in life, but I'll never forget this. And, this may not be the last thing I ever post on this channel, but for now, I'm going to be doing other things. But again, one last time, I want to thank you guys, and I appreciate everything, guys. Thank you so much. Until next time.